Okay. Shvua Tov! A good week. May we all be blessed with a good week. We could all use a good week. May we have a good week, a good vach, as you say in Yiddish. Who's tuning in? Where are you coming in from? I know it's late. Shabbat ends late, and it's going to get later and later until the longest Shabbats of the year, right around the summer. When summer begins in June, right? That's right around the time that Shabbat lets out the latest, and I shudder to think how we're going to have our Saturday night teaching. But I will go live, and hopefully you'll be able to join me. On Shabbat, it takes me longer. I read my page, I learn my page, but I can't take notes. So then as soon as Shabbat ends, I get my notebook, I take my notes on the page that I've read, I get ready for this show. We have our family Havdalah, marking the separation between the holiness of Shabbat and the mundane 6 days of the week. And then I come to you, my holy brothers and sisters. So, who's in the house? Where are you tuning in from? Are you excited to be learning? We are doing our part. You know, we never could have imagined, I never could have imagined when I launched AT Daily. I launched it because the Talmud cycle began again on January 5th. I said, let's just do this. Let's have a daily show. Let's learn the Talmud together. And at that time, never could have imagined that we'd be teaching under these circumstances, that this plague would hit the world. And yet here we are. Here we are. And there's usually about 2,500 people watching this each day. So we're 2,500 strong, learning Torah together in a class that spans states, countries, continents. We're keeping up our learning. That contributes to the healing of the world. It's very important what we're doing here together. So a big shkoyach to you, my holy brothers and sisters. Shkoyach means yasher koach. May you be strengthened when you do a good deed, when you perform a mitzvah, when you fulfill your obligation. We say to you, yasher koach, may you be strengthened to fulfill many more mitzvahs, right? So all of you are showing how resilient we are, how resilient is our desire to learn together, even in this difficult time. And this learning matters. We are doing our part to heal the world. So shkoyach to you, my holy brothers and sisters. It's great to have you here. Please comment where you're tuning in from. I always love to know. It's wonderful for everyone to see how many different states, how many different countries are learning together in this show. Sandy's in the house. Linda Kretschmer Chambers is in the house. I see some comments coming in. I don't understand why I don't see. Oh, there. So Deborah Englander is in from Clearwater, Florida. Awesome. Now I see it on the YouTube one as well. And I see Irene and Ari. And Robin from Birmingham, Alabama. Wonderful. Let's keep those coming. From Michigan is in the house. Lisa Rook Shalom from the USA. Leslie from Minnesota. All right, I'm going to get right into it because there's a lot to cover. We are holding by page 23 of Tractate Shabbos. It's the second tractate in the Talmud. Shabbos, we're in chapter 2. We've been commenting, elaborating on, learning the first Mishnah of chapter 2. With what may we light the wick of the Shabbos lamp? And we've now gone into a digression that's lasted for a couple days about Hanukkah. The question was the materials that we use to light the Hanukkah light, to light the Shabbos light, may we use them to light the Hanukkah light? The answer was the things that are prohibited in the Shabbos light are permitted in the Hanukkah light because the Hanukkah light has different requirements than the Shabbos light. Now we come to the question, when we're lighting the Hanukkah menorah, what is the exact nature of the mitzvah that we are performing? And the question devolves down to, are we fulfilling our obligation to light the Hanukkah menorah when we light the candle or when we light the oil lamp? Or are we fulfilling our obligation when we place that lamp in a public place, right? Because we're told that were commanded to publicize the miracle, right? A miracle was performed for our ancestors in that time, a little more than 2,000 years ago. And to publicize, and the sages instituted the following year that this would become a holiday for all time. And so we observe these 8 nights of Hanukkah, and we light the Hanukkah lights in a public place, right? Unless it's a time of danger, right? If you're going to get killed for doing Jewish practice, so then you're excused from putting it in a public place. But the normal mitzvah is to put that in the public place. So the question is, are we actually fulfilling the obligation by lighting the light, or by placing the menorah with the light going in a public place? So 2 cases are brought down to help us understand the question. One who holds a Hanukkah menorah in his hand and he lights it, right? Or remember that the obligation could have been fulfilled, can still be fulfilled by just having one light, right? Just having one lamp going. It's only the most meticulous of the meticulous that increase the number of candles each night. But one could fulfill by just having one light, and that could be a lamp, right? Remember that in the ancient world, a lamp is an oil lamp. Looks like a genie's lamp, right? It holds oil inside, has a wick that comes out. We've been discussing what materials the wick can be made out of. So if one is holding a lamp and lights it, and his intention is to do that for Hanukkah, but he just lit it while he was holding it, and then he put it down, so he didn't fulfill his obligation, right? One who holds a menorah and lights has not fulfilled his one who holds a menorah and lights it has not fulfilled his obligation until he places it in the public place where the people can see it. And so we say, okay, so that seems to indicate that it's placing the Hanukkah lamp that is what actually fulfills the obligation. But then the Gemara says, but no, actually, the reason why it's prohibited, you haven't fulfilled your obligation until you place it, is because people might come to think that when you lit it, you were just lighting it for your own needs. And remember that the Hanukkah light can only be used to publicize the miracle of Hanukkah. You cannot read by it, you cannot count money by it, you cannot even perform a mitzvah by it, like tying the fringes of your garment. So one might think that the person is holding that lamp for his own needs, and so it's an inappropriate way to fulfill the mitzvah. Another case, one who lights inside and then takes it outside. Has he fulfilled his obligation? Answer, no, he has not. That is an inappropriate way to fulfill the mitzvah. And so that would seem to indicate that it's placing the Hanukkah in the public place that is the essence of the mitzvah. But the Gemara answers, no, the reason that we say he can't do that might again be because people will think that he lit the lamp for his own needs and then he placed it outside to fulfill Hanukkah, and we don't want him doing it that way. So then we have another case. One who has a Shabbos lamp going during Shabbos, and it's during the time of Hanukkah, so it's Shabbos, Hanukkah, and then Shabbos ends, and he wants to use that same lamp for the Hanukkah lamp, right? So what he must do is extinguish the Shabbos lamp and then relight it to be his Hanukkah lamp. It doesn't say he has to extinguish the Shabbos lamp, pick it up, put it down, and light it, or light it and then pick it up and put it down. All he has to do is extinguish and then light it again. And from that, we learn out that the essence of the mitzvah of Hanukkah is the lighting, not the placing. And we have further proof that that's the case, because if we look at the bracha of Hanukkah, what is the bracha? When we light the Hanukkah candles, we say, I'm teaching it, so I'm going to say it properly with God's name. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the light of Hanukkah. Right? To light the light of Hanukkah, right? Vitzivanu, who has commanded us concerning the light of Hanukkah. So it's the lighting that is the mitzvah on which we say the bracha, right? We make a blessing over the commandment to light. It's the lighting of the light, right? That is the essence of it. In passing, we note that women are obligated just like men in the mitzvah of Hanukkah. A deaf mute, meaning somebody who's deaf and mute, an imbecile, so somebody doesn't have mental capacity, or a minor are not obligated in the mitzvah of Hanukkah. Likewise, these three categories could not serve as a witness. But we note that somebody who is deaf and mute but has established a way of communicating so that we know what this person is thinking, even though he can't talk, then he is obligated like anyone else. Thank God we live in a time when people who are deaf and mute have all kinds of tools that are available to them, including sign language, which probably did not exist 2,000 years ago, and certainly all the technologies that help differently abled people connect with the mainstream population. Those just weren't around back then. Thank God we have them now. On the subject, this is a great question that I found myself wondering about many times, and many people have asked this question. We say at Hanukkah, we make three blessings. Okay, we make three blessings. What are they? The first one is, Lord our God, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to light the light of Hanukkah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, who performed miracles for our ancestors at this time. And blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us life and sustained us and enabled us to reach this season. The third one we say only on the first night of Hanukkah, and we say that it's Shechechianu. We say that blessing, who has given us life, sustained us, and allowed us to reach this season whenever we do an important mitzvah for the first time that year. So we say it on the first night of Hanukkah, but not on the other nights. The second blessing, who performed miracles for us, this could even be said by somebody who doesn't light, but who is just seeing the candles that somebody else lit. But the one who commands us to light, this is the tricky one. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who commanded us to light, who sanctifies us with commandments, and commanded us to light the light of Hanukkah. Hanukkah happened much later than the Torah was given, about 1,000 years later, late in the Second Temple period. The Torah was given, right, it's 400 years of the Second Temple, 400 years of the First Temple, about 70 years in between, and then 400 years when the tabernacle stood in Israel as the center of religious worship. And it was before that, 40 years in the desert, and that's when you had the commandments given at Sinai. So there was no Hanukkah when the Torah was given. Hanukkah didn't happen until 1,000 years later. Why do we say that God commanded us to light the lights of Hanukkah? And the answer is, we say that bracha over many commandments that were instituted by our sages that were not in the Torah. Why do we say that God sanctified us with commandments and commanded us to do this particular commandment, which was taught and given to us and legislated by our sages, rather than God himself when he dictated the Torah to Moses? Let me read to you. And the Gemara asks, and where did God command us? The mitzvah of Hanukkah is not mentioned in the Torah. So how is it possible to say that it was commanded to us by God? The Gemara answers that Rav Avia said, the obligation to recite this blessing is derived from the verse. This is Deuteronomy 17:11. You shall not turn aside from the sentence which they shall declare unto you to the right nor to the left. From this verse, the mitzvah incumbent upon all of Israel to heed the statements and decrees of the sages is derived. Therefore, one who fulfills their directives fulfills a divine commandment. God did not personally command us to light the Hanukkah lights, but God did command us that we would have the law interpreted for us and expanded as necessary in every generation, because God knew perfectly well that the world would keep changing, that we would have a wisdom tradition, that we would have Gedolim, great teachers, great rabbis in every generation who would receive the tradition from the previous generation. And if necessary, they would come to agree, the way that sages agree, and institute new laws. And then those laws would have the same binding effect as the commandments spelled out in the Torah. So here at Deuteronomy 17:11, it was given to us by a negative commandment. You shall not deviate from the laws that are given to you by the sages in your generation. Some people would prefer that the source for following commandments given to us by our rabbis would be a positive commandment. So Rav Nehemiah said that the mitzvah to heed the voice of the elders of Israel is derived from the verse, quote, and this is Deuteronomy 32:7, ask your father, and he will declare unto you your elders, and they will tell you. That is the source for our obligation to follow the commandments instituted upon us by our sages. And that is why it is accurate and good and right that we make the blessing, blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to kindle the Hanukkah light. Now we understand that, where that comes from. Okay, let me get back into my notes here. And while we're talking about blessings, when do we say blessings over rabbinic laws and when do we not? We say blessings over all rabbinic ordinances unless they are instituted because of uncertainty. So there's a principle in the Talmud called demai, which refers to grain that one purchased from an ignoramus, right? So if you purchase, he's a Jew, but he's an ignoramus. He's an uneducated Jew who may or may not be following laws. So what we're not sure about is if this ignoramus, this guy who just has no Jewish education, if he tithed that grain properly, because you cannot benefit from untithed grain, right? If the farmer didn't set aside the proper tithe to give to the priest, to give to the Levite, to give to the poor as needed, etc., if he didn't set aside those tithes, then it's like we shouldn't be eating his grain. So if you bought from somebody and it's uncertain whether that person tithed or not, so then you have an obligation to separate the tithes from that grain. But you don't say the blessing that you would normally say when you separate the tithe of grain because it's a case of uncertainty, right? So in a case of certainty, you make a bracha, and there's always a bracha for that situation. Why do we not make a bracha in cases of uncertainty? Because we don't want to utter a blessing in vain. We don't want to use God's name in vain. We don't want to use it unnecessarily. In a case of uncertainty about a Torah commandment, then we would say the blessing. But in the case of a blessing over a rabbinic commandment, if it's uncertain, we don't say the blessing. Okay, we get back to Hanukkah and where we place our menorah, the Hanukkah menorah, right? So if you have a house that has two entrances facing in different directions, like if you have a corner house, right, and you have entrances on two different streets, or you have a courtyard that has entrances facing in two different directions, so they're on two different streets. So then you should place a Hanukkah menorah visible in both directions, right, beside both entrances. By the way, if you have the ability to place, and we said there's reasons why you wouldn't place it outside your door, or maybe you could do it in a window next to your door, but ideally, the ideal way to do this, and again, if you're like in a crowded shop, you're gonna place your Hanukkah menorah in a crowded market where a camel with a big flat load of flax on its back might walk by and start a fire, so then you shouldn't place the Hanukkah menorah there. But if you're not in that situation, let's say you have a front porch, where do you put the Hanukkah menorah, if possible? To the left of the door. Why to the left of the door? This is not on today's page, but I forgot to mention it a couple days ago, so I want to just share this. Why to the left of the door? Because the mezuzah is on the right, the scroll, which has God's name in it and a few other passages, which is a source of protection to the home, and that is on the right of the doorway as you walk into the home. And so the menorah, the Hanukkah menorah, the lit Hanukkah menorah should be on the left of the door. So that when you enter that home, you are surrounded by the mitzvahs, right? You are surrounded by the beauty of the Hanukkah light on your left and the protection of the mezuzah on your right. And this is similar to the placement of the temple menorah in the Holy Temple. As you faced the sanctuary, the menorah, the large gold menorah that was in the temple courtyard was on your left and the altar was on your right. Okay. So if your house or courtyard faces two different streets, you should have two different Hanukkah menorahs. Incidentally to this, okay, and why? So the question is, why? Why do you need two Hanukkah menorahs? You have fulfilled your obligation with one. It's not because you haven't fulfilled your obligation that you need two menorahs. It is a benefit to you. Why? Because people might walk down the one street and not the other, and they might look at your house and say, so that guy's not fulfilling his obligation. They might come to suspect that you are not a God-loving person. So to protect you from the suspicion of your neighbors, you should have, if you face two different directions, you should have a Hanukkah menorah facing each of those directions so that you won't come to be suspected of impropriety. You know, these days, this idea, the appearance of impropriety, it's very important when we look at our elected officials. I think there's, it's been in and out of the news a little bit. I mean, we're all so obsessed with the coronavirus, and we're praying constantly that everybody is healthy and stays well. And if you have it, God forbid, you should recover and have a complete and speedy recovery. And we say amen. But now and then you hear in the news that when the news was first starting to break about the virus, that certain politicians sold a bunch of stock before the market crashed. Now, they might have been doing that in a legal way. Some of them are saying, my stuff is held in a blind trust. I had no idea. I didn't call my broker and tell them to sell. The problem for them is an appearance of impropriety. And here our sages are warning us. They say you have to avoid the appearance of impropriety at all costs. And another example is given of how one will avoid the appearance of impropriety. This has to do with the commandment of pe'ah. So pe'ah is related to payas, right? So if you look at a Hasidic Orthodox Jew, you might often see they have the long strands of hair that come out right here in front of their ears, right? Like on the outside their beard, it's like its own thing, and it's coming from the corner of their scalp, right? From the corner of their scalp right here, they let that grow. And that's actually related to this Torah mitzvah of leaving the corner of the field for the poor, right? So if you're a farmer, when you harvest your grain in the land of Israel, especially in ancient times when the temple stood, there was a requirement that when you harvest all the grain in your field, you would leave the corner standing so that the poor could come along and gather that grain and not be hungry, right? Today, we fulfill that obligation by giving tzedakah, by giving charity to the poor. It is incumbent on all people of faith, not just Jews, all people of faith, to set aside a regular portion of their income, their net income, for charity. Now, this can be giving to the poor so they can eat, giving to educational institutions, giving to other nonprofit causes that help the world and that you really believe in. It's your choice where that 10% goes. But when you set aside 10% of your income to worthy causes, God becomes your business partner, and your business will prosper, your profession will prosper, you will prosper more than you thought possible. It's the greatest deal in the world. You give away 10% of your income to good causes, it will double your income. You'll make much more money than you would have made otherwise, because you'll know that the more money you make, the more you're going to give, and it's automatic. The way we have it set up ourselves is we have a Meiser account, right? So anytime we receive income, 10% of it immediately goes into that account, and all the money in that account is set aside for charities, and then we just decide which charities we're going to distribute it to. That all comes from this idea of pe'ah in the field. So, what we're told here, to avoid suspicion is that the pear that you leave in your field, you gotta leave it in the corner, and you gotta leave it at the end of your harvesting. If you set it aside in the beginning of the harvesting, people might come to suspect that what you're doing is, well, you have poor relatives who qualify to receive peah, so you're going to notify them, hey, I'm harvesting on such and such a day, make sure you come and get the peah of my field. And you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to leave it for the poor that come along. And you don't want to make it difficult for the poor to get charity from you. You don't want to leave them guessing, well, what day is he going to harvest, and when is it going to be available, and is it going to be difficult to get? Is he going to leave it in the middle of the field, or the side of the field, or the corner of the field? And so our sages are saying, you don't want your neighbors to suspect that you're being cheap with the amount of grain that you're supposed to be leaving for the poor. You want to be very transparent, make it very easy for the poor to receive the charity from you. And these days, we talk about this a lot, these days, find a way to be helpful for your neighbors that can't get to the market or have other challenges during this plague that we're all experiencing. If they're old, they're scared to go to the market, volunteer to go for them and make it easy for them to find you, right? And I'm seeing lately that for people who are on the app Nextdoor, people are posting very often, at least in our neighborhood, hey, do you need somebody to go to the store for you? I can do that for you. Post on Facebook and any kind of local groups. Make yourselves available in an easy and transparent way. Finally, on this page, we look at the question, what if you only have enough money, you only have enough means to afford either oil for the Shabbos lamp or oil for the Hanukkah lamp? What should you do? Answer, oil for the Shabbos lamp. Why? One might think it's because, well, in matters of things that come up matters of holiness that happen more often versus matters of holiness that happen less often, right? Like when there's some kind of a conflict between Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah or Shabbos and Yom Kippur, you would think that, oh, well, the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, those only happen once a year, so they get priority over Shabbos, which happens every week. I mean, we get to experience Shabbos every week. Probably we're going to prioritize the high holidays that only happen once a year. But no, we actually prioritize the holiness that happens every week. The most important holiday in Judaism happens every 7 days, and that is Shabbos. But that is not the reason that if you only have enough money to either light a Shabbos lamp or a Hanukkah lamp, that you should spend it on the oil for the Shabbos lamp. The reason for that is shalom bayis, peace of the house, shalom in the home. This is so beautiful, right? Why do we have a Shabbos light? So that we will have light in our homes during the Friday night Shabbos dinner that we enjoy with our spouse and our family. God willing, we have them and they're available to have that dinner with us. So for the sake of peace in the home, so that we're not eating in the dark, that's why you gotta have that light. And so we can enjoy each other's company, you gotta have that light. We prioritize shalom bayis over Hanukkah. However, if you only have enough money to either purchase, like you already got your oil for the Shabbos lamp, and now you're deciding whether to buy wine to make the kiddush of Shabbat, when we make a blessing to enter Shabbat and we sanctify the day over a cup of wine, or to have enough wine to come out of Shabbat, the Havdalah ceremony that we just did a little while ago. It was beautiful. We did it on a Zoom with 70 families from our kids' school. Big shout out to Rabbi David Block and the teachers at Shalhevet High School here in LA who led that. But if you are making a choice between wine for Kiddush or wine for Havdalah and oil for your Hanukkah lamp, then you get oil for the Hanukkah lamp, right? Because Shabbat will be holy whether you have wine or not. You certainly want that wine. But if you must choose between wine for Shabbos or oil for the Hanukkah lamp, so then you choose oil for the Hanukkah lamp because we must publicize the miracle of Hanukkah, right? That's what that mitzvah is all about, publicize that the Holy One saved our ancestors in that place, in that time, right? And lastly, if you are one who is careful to light the Shabbos light and the Hanukkah lights, you will merit to have children who are Torah scholars. If you are careful about the mitzvah of mezuzah, if you're a Jew and you're careful to have a mezuzah on your home, you will merit to have a beautiful home to put your mezuzah on. If you are careful, you're a Jewish man, and you are careful to have tzistzis on your prayer shawl and on the small garment that goes under your shirt. I have it under my shirt now, and it's a four-cornered garment that has the ritual fringes on the end. So if you're meticulous to always wear tzistzis under your clothes, you will merit to have beautiful clothes. If you are a person who loves the sages, you will merit to have kids who are sages. If you are a person who has awe of the sages, right? If you're in awe of people with great Torah learning, you will merit to become a Torah scholar yourself. Isn't that just a beautiful set of teachings to complete our study of page 23 here in Tractate Shabbos? Let me just check if there are any questions. Just looking. George Henderson just said, God is your business partner. He loves it. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, my friends. Be meticulous about tithing and your business will prosper. Be meticulous about mezuzah. You'll have a beautiful home to put it on. Be meticulous about tzistzis. You'll have beautiful clothes. And teach your kids to love Torah learning, and they'll become Torah learners, right? If you yourself love sages, you'll have kids who become sages. If you have awe of the sages, you will become a Torah scholar yourself. My pals, it's wonderful to be learning with you on a Saturday night. If you're on the East Coast, I'm in awe of you. I know it's quite late. So well done, shkoyach, to be learning with us. Sending you all big love from the West Coast, and hope to see you tomorrow when we continue, God willing, with page 24 of Masechet Shabbos. All the best.